management for Spokane County.
Thank you very much. The first question I have for you is, I just recently read an article where you were speaking, and one of the things that stuck out to me was that this is nothing new. These, threats to our country, it's not like this is a brand new thing that happened yesterday.
Correct. We have a variety of hazards and risks that we're faced with every day. That's one of the reasons why we do what we call all hazard planning, so that we are looking at what happens with our natural disasters, whether it's severe weather or landslides or earthquakes, and then of course man-made disasters, so terrorism or bomb threats or hazardous material spills, things like that.
So we're talking about that kind of planning today. What kind of hazardous planning do you guys do on your end over here?
So we do all hazards planning. We have a comprehensive emergency management plan, which covers everything that we do within the county. So how we work with our partners, all of our first responding partner agencies, so all of our fire districts, our fire departments, our police and sheriff's offices, and basically how we work together and how we respond to any type of threat or hazard.
Let's talk about, the big thing was this Hawaii event this weekend, which I think has made everyone think, oh my gosh, how do I know that something's gonna happen? What do I do? At least for me, when I woke up Saturday and saw all this media attention on it, that was my first thought, like, oh my gosh, like a text. I didn't think of that. How, if there was something that were to happen that would be threatening to Spokane,
Mm-hmm.
how would we find out about it? What would happen? Would we get a text?
So you could. We have a variety of communications methods available to us. We have our Alert Spokane program, and our Alert Spokane program is kind of our overarching policy and program directives, how we do what we do and what it is we do what we do and how we communicate with our community. And then we have, as part of that, we have our messaging capability, which is provided by our vendor is Code Red. And through that, we can call people, we can text people, we can email people, and of course we would utilize our traditional media like you and radio as well, and then of course social media, because you can't do anything in the world today without incorporating social media into how you're communicating with people.
So if there was an imminent threat and it was for real,
Mm-hmm.
that might be a way that we would find out about it from you guys.
It would be absolutely the way you would find out about it.
Great. I guess the kind of follow-up to that, and going off of this weekend, sorry to put you guys in the spotlight, but what if it's fake? What kind of system do you guys have that something like that doesn't get sent out again? Not from you guys again.
Well, so my first reaction when I saw the news was, my heart really goes out to them. It truly does, because no one wants to make that kind of mistake, and you don't want to be that guy. But we have so many well-intentioned people who are working in emergency management that it certainly was not intentional in any way, but it created a really bad day for them. For our system here in Spokane County, we have a different technology that we use. There are a multitude of different vendors and service providers available in the marketplace, and there's a wide variety of capability and features that come with those. And I think, given the news reports that I've seen, the state of Hawaii is kind of limited in their technology, but that's a different piece of it. But for us in Spokane, the technology that we use, there are a number of safeguards built right into our system. Our protocols right now require 2 people to look at what we're doing. We have only a limited cadre of people who have the authority to even be in the system to begin with. And then we have a protocol of launch codes, and there's a number of authorities and permissions that you have to have as you're going through the system to develop the message before you can even begin to think about hitting that button. So with our system, it's not going to happen where there's someone gets into it and they're just clicking through and something goes out. That won't happen with our system.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. Very complex. Is there an example of anything, even if it's a natural disaster that's happened, where you guys have had to put that protocol into place?
So we've actually used the system. The Code Red system was up and running last spring. It's a new purchase for the county. And since we started it, we've had 27 different activations. We've used it for missing and endangered persons. The Spokane Police Department has used it a number of times for that. We had evacuation notices for Fire District 4 during fire season, and then we assisted the City of Airway Heights during their water contamination issue. We put out the location of the water distribution site through the system as well for them. So we've used it a number of times very successfully.
Nice. Now, let's say, God forbid, something like a threat from North Korea is founded and something does happen. On your guys' end, give me the scenario. Do you send out that message right away? And what do people do when they get that message here in Spokane? What's the safe thing to do?
For a nuclear missile strike?
It sounds crazy to say, but I mean
it does. And the interesting thing, if you look at Washington State history, the RCW has actually in the past prevented the planning for nuclear war. It's prevented by our RCW. So the state legislature is now looking at changing that language so that we can now fully address that issue. What I would recommend in terms of a missile strike happening now is any preparedness activities that you've done is all good. Because if you are preparing for, whether it is the next winter storm where we're without power for several days, and you are doing the things that you need to do with that, you have your water, you have your food, you have a backup power supply, you have all of those things that we talk about on a daily basis as basic preparedness. I would hope that people have those things in place, because that's what's going to help you in the event that we have this type of emergency.
And when it comes to what we were just talking about before, these fallout shelters, I mean, in the 50s and 60s, it was crazy huge. You told me yourself that that's not really a thing anymore. These places are actually hazardous.
They can be, yes.
In terms of, I think you had said when it comes to the air down there and just whether they're even safe. If you haven't touched something like that for 50, 60 years,
right,
stuff can happen.
Right.
So where do you go if something does happen? Do you go to your basement?
I would say it's going to depend, truly, and I know people hate that answer when we say, well, it depends, but so much of what we want people to do and what we need people to do in response to an emergency is so situational dependent on the actual facts of the emergency. So in terms of looking at a possible missile strike, what is our distance? Are we the impact zone? If we're not, where is the impact zone, and how is the fallout going to get to us? What are our prevailing wind patterns? What is the weather like? The actual answer depends upon all of those specifics that are in place at the time it happens.
Is there one thing, though, in particular you could say you should get into like a brick building, or you shouldn't get near a tree? Like, are there certain things?
Well, the thing about nuclear war, and when you're talking about radiological hazards, there's science and then there's public perception. And they can be two very different things. And when you're talking about protecting yourself from radiation exposure, you need to look at three things. You need to look at time, distance, and shielding. So you want to limit your time of exposure. You want to have distance from, again, where is that impact zone? What is that radius? What is that range? And then shielding. You want to have something between you and your exposure source. So absolutely, we would want people to stay inside. We would recommend using our shelter-in-place protocols, where you're shutting your windows, you're shutting your doors, you're turning off your HVAC system, things like that. So when we're looking at a radiological threat, we're concerned about time, distance, and shielding.
Thank you. No, I know. I just, going back to that text from the weekend, I think it said something along the lines of seek shelter.
Yep, and that's why. That's the shielding.
Okay.
That's the shielding aspect of it.
And to me, it's just like, well, I know in this situation you shouldn't go near this, and in this situation, so it's like, what do you do in that kind of situation?
Right, and it would really depend again on what our weather pattern is that day, because if it's rainy or misty, it'll pull the radiation out of the atmosphere quicker. But if it's sunny, or if the wind is blowing, then that of course will just move the particulate along.
Well, is there anything you think we should add? I think you've been very helpful and on a interesting, not new but newer subject to be talking about.
Well, I would just encourage people to practice basic preparedness, and that's really the bottom line for us, because the more you prepare, the safer your family is, the better you will come through anything, whether it's a blizzard or or a landslide or a missile strike, whatever it is. I would ask people to be informed, not be afraid. The more information that you have is, the more comfortable you are.
And I just, how I mentioned before that I was in Alaska, whenever I would do these stories, they drilled home this, have a storage box just filled with food and water.
Yep.
And, we used to think, because we were in Alaska, like, oh, it's so far off and that's why you need that. And, they have earthquake threats, but it's something you really could use everywhere. It's not a bad thing to have in your home.
Absolutely. Everybody should have at least, we used to call it a 3-day kit. We are now encouraging people to look 1 week, 2 weeks out. Because the reality of it is, if you look at how our stores are set up, our grocery stores and everything, they have maybe 3 days worth of supply. And so if something interrupts that supply chain and the trucks can't get to us, well then the stores are going to be out of food fairly rapidly. So make sure that you have your preparedness kit, and you go on GSEM's website, and we have lots of materials and links and resources on our website to help people do that basic preparedness.
Perfect. Well, you've been so helpful. Thank you so much.
You are more than welcome. Happy to do it.
Good job.